Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video, and today we're going to be taking a look at WipEout Omega Collection for the PlayStation 4. This title was sent to me by PlayStation Portugal so that I could give it a look and tell you guys my opinions on it. And good God, is it great to finally have a WipEout on the PlayStation 4. I got to be completely honest with you guys. For those of you who've never heard me say this before, which I believe I've said it multiple times, but WipEout is one of the reasons why I went with the PlayStation 3 instead of the Xbox 360 all those years ago. And I've never really regretted it because WipEout is an amazing title. And WipEout Omega Collection is essentially, as the name implies, a collection as well as a remaster of the WipEout titles 2048, which was only available for the Vita, HD, and Fury, which were available on the PlayStation 3. Now, I gotta be completely honest, when I first heard about this title, I thought they were going to do a bit of a standardization and make all of these games kind of work together, mix the tracks, and do like a custom campaign, something like that. That's what I thought the collection was all about. Unfortunately, that is not the case, and I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. It's just like, I guess I wanted even more than what we've gotten out of WipEout because I just really like WipEout at the end of the day. But ultimately, these are very much kind of like separate things. So like 2048 is its own thing, and then HD and Fury are their own thing as well. When it comes to the Omega Collection, there is a campaign for each of these three titles. So there's a 2048 campaign, there's a campaign for WipEout HD, and a campaign for WipEout Fury. Now, the unlocks that you get in Fury, like whenever you unlock a new ship or something like that, you can also use that in WipEout HD. However, all of the ships in 2048 are different. This is also because of the fact that for those of you that never played 2048, since it was at the end of the day a Vita exclusive, you actually unlock the ships in different ways, and there are different classes of ships that have a lot of different stats to them that are more, how should I put this? It's a more complex system than what you have in HD and Fury. Whereas in HD and Fury, you might have a ship that's got, you know, a little bit more thrust. I'm talking about within the same team. A little bit more thrust, a little bit more handling, a little bit more of this and that, but it's like minor stat changes. When you're talking about WipEout 2048, you're going to have completely different class of ships. So you have the speed variety, which is going to be a ship that is built for, as the name implies, speed. You have the fighter variety, which is going to be more adept at destroying other ships, and it's also going to have more powerful weapons. And you also have the agility variety, which is better at handling, and I mean a big increase in handling. It's going to get much better turning and all that kinds of stuff. So the way that the ships work in 2048 made it so that they kind of just like separated that from HD and Fury. So when you're playing HD and Fury, think of it like you're playing the, you know, basically a modernized version of the PlayStation 3 version. And when you're playing the 2048, it's kind of like a Vita port, except it's been, there's been some changes to the way that the campaign works and stuff, because the way the campaign worked on 2048, it was just like this big, long thing that you would do. They kind of split that up a little bit, so you have the 2048 campaign, then they have another one which is 2049, then they have the 2050, and I haven't finished the 2050 yet, so I don't know if there's more after that or what the deal is. But even with all that stuff, I'm just still super happy that we just have a WipEout. Now, let's talk about visuals, because I know that a lot of you guys are curious about it, and this game runs 4K 60 FPS, and then there's like a setting for motion blur. I believe I was reading the press release earlier today. I don't really care too much about this stuff because some people are like, oh, but is it checkerboarding? Is it this and that and the other? And some people want to be like super specific about it. So if motion blur is off, you're going to get native 4K. If motion blur is on, you're going to get the checkerboard stuff. So there you go. For all of you who are really want to get specific with it, it is either running at 60 FPS or, like I say, close enough, because I've always mentioned I don't have an accurate way of actually measuring FPS on a console, but it is basically running great, and it looks great as well, as far as I'm concerned. Because here's the thing, right? I mean, if you've played one of the previous WipEouts, you know that because the art style that this game goes for, you know, the sci-fi, high-tech stuff, but not ultra-realistic, that thing like works really well. It's very timeless, and you can kind of like upscale it into infinity. So like if you pick up, if eventually Sony picks up this collection, I'm talking like maybe 10 years from now when we're all in, well, actually 10 years from now we might be farther beyond even 10K. But let's just, like, for hypothesis purposes, you could essentially upscale these textures all the way to 10K, and most likely the game would still look really good for its time. So, because these are some very timeless textures is what I'm talking about from visual standpoint. But basically, just to really get right down to it, in my opinion, the game looks, runs, and plays great. Now let's talk a little bit about sound, which is also extremely important. Now, for the purpose of this particular video, you guys are not going to have any soundtrack running in the background. I have to apologize for that, but ultimately, here's the thing, right? If all of these tracks on WipEout are licensed, and if I put this stuff on here, YouTube's going to block the video worldwide, and nobody's going to be able to see it. Nobody's going to be able to even, like, interact with this video, because I know it's going to happen. I mean, I've seen what happens when there's even, like, a hint of some kind of licensing track on my channel. Like, the whole video just goes to crap. This is not PlayStation's fault. This is completely because YouTube just has this really stupid copyright system that we all know and love, the Content ID match, which kind of just sucks, and I don't want to turn my whole video into talking about that. But with the draconian application of the Content ID that is enforced by the music industry, I just know that this video would get straight up censored, so you guys can't experience the soundtrack from here. But I will put a link in the description below. I believe there's like this playlist that I saw on the PlayStation blog where you guys can check out the soundtrack for yourselves in Spotify. So I'm going to put that link down in the description below so that you guys can check that out. But let me tell you, in my opinion, the soundtrack is excellent. Hasn't it always been for WipEout, though? The soundtracks in WipEout, in my opinion, have always been top notch. I love the game. I love the soundtrack. Nothing else needs to be said about that. However, if you're not a fan of electronic music, maybe you won't like it. That's pretty much all I can say about it. But then again, if you're not a fan of electronic, usually fans of WipEout are also fans of electronic music, so I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but just letting you guys know. Either way, I'm pretty sure you can turn it off, just like I did for this video. So there you go. The other thing, I wanted to also talk about sound. So sounds have been revamped across the board, at least as much as I can tell, because I've played all the versions of these games. Like I played 2048 on the Vita. I played the HD and Fury on the PlayStation 3, and I want to say that it sounds like the sounds have been revamped. They look, they sound, I don't know how to put it, because like WipEout, basically when you went from HD and Fury to 2048, they made the ships sound a little bit more like they had actual engines, which I thought was great, because it sounds like basically when the ship is going, it sounds like a speed up, revved up version of an actual car engine, which was actually done really well. And I kind of want to say they optimized on that quite a bit. Also, the sound of missiles coming out of your ship and impacting onto other ships. I want to say that those all have been maybe a little bit revamped or maybe slightly just tweaked. But I want to say that it sounds different, and it sounds different for the better. So I really, really enjoyed what I've seen on that. Now, let's talk some more specifics on gameplay. The controls are as tight as always. The game is super solid. As far as I'm concerned, WipEout is still the best futuristic racer. There are a lot of new racers that have come out since then, and I really like, I'm pretty much a huge fan of futuristic racers, but WipEout, as far as I'm concerned, is still kind of like the king. Gameplay, super solid. The controls are like super tight. Still have obviously the air brake stuff with R2 and L2. Those things seem to be working just fine. The variety in ships, there are a ton of ships in this, as well as there are a ton of tracks that are also reversible and all that stuff. There's just like a big collection, almost like a celebration of the WipEout franchise, and I'm just super happy to see it. I've been waiting for it for 5 years, pretty much. As a matter of fact, I was like really sad when I heard the news a couple of years back that Studio Liverpool had been dismantled or something along that nature, and I was like, no, those are the guys that do the WipEout games. But here's the thing, like, as much as I love this game, you can totally see that it is not an evolution of the franchise. I mean, I'm not saying that's what it was marketed as, because it wasn't. It was marketed as a collection. It is the Omega Collection. So it is not an evolution of the franchise. Pretty much if you've played 2048 in the Vita. There's a couple of new things here and there, like the way they organize the campaign and all that. But it is essentially the same game. If you've played HD in Fury on the PlayStation 3, it is also essentially the same game. Although I think they have maybe a new team on there, the Tigron team. I'm not sure if that was around when I was playing on the PlayStation 3. But yeah, that's the thing, right? It's a remaster, and you guys know that I'm all for remasters. But when it came to WipEout, I wanted something a little bit more next level. I wanted more than what we've got, even though we've gotten a lot, and I'm happy with what we've gotten here. Like, if you just think of it straight up as a remaster, you can't go wrong. This is straight up remaster, looks great, plays great, it's solid all around. But if you were looking for the next evolution in WipEout, like let's say for instance if you went from HD and Fury to 2048, like that was an evolution. There were changes, there were a lot of new things put into place. But when you're going from 2048 to the Omega Collection, then there's not that many new things. You know, it's just like, sure, they've reorganized the campaign so that it makes a little bit more sense. It's not as complex. But the tracks are still the same. The ships are still the same. But one of the things that is definitely a huge improvement is the simple fact that at least you're not going to get frame drops, which getting frame drops in WipEout is just like the most frustrating thing. It's one of the reasons why I eventually stopped playing 2048 on the Vita, is because I'd be doing these really hard tracks and it's like, oh, have a little bit of dips in frames, which would happen on the Vita version, and I'd be like, no, fuck! I would instantly just crash because WipEout requires that much precision as far as I'm concerned. But I'm happy with it personally. I really, really enjoy it. You guys can see the gameplay in the background if it looks like something you'd be interested. I think most people already know whether or not they're into WipEout. They're just probably trying to figure out whether it is something, if there's something wrong with it, if there are major differences, major things that have been implemented. And that's pretty much what this video was about, just letting you guys know. The game is still as solid as ever. It's just not a major evolution to the franchise, which is something that I really, really wanted. As a matter of fact, I do have to say that one of the biggest disappointments for me in WipEout was when, in this WipEout, was when I launched the campaign, right, for 2048, and I'm playing it and all that stuff, and I'm like, okay, so they probably, standardized this through all the other campaigns. And then I load up HD, and I see that there's actually straight up a different UI, because the UIs were different between HD and Fury in 2048. And I figured, well, at least they're going to standardize the UI. But no, it's just like, if you've played HD and Fury on the PlayStation 3, the UI is the exact same that you're going to find in the Omega Collection. Then the 2048 from the Vita, the UI is the same there as well. So you kind of have, it's almost like having two separate games. Or should I say two separate games and an expansion? Because Fury was essentially an expansion to HD. But ultimately, it's amazing, and I think pretty much everybody that owns a PlayStation 4, at least I think a big majority, is going to be fans of WipEout, and you guys should definitely get the Omega Collection. But ultimately, I wanted more. I wanted this to be an evolution of the franchise, which is not, but it's gonna keep me going for a while still, for sure. So yeah, thank you guys very much for watching the video. Leave me all your comments, feedback, all that kinds of good stuff in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.